This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Barry Colfer, and I'm the Director of Research at the Institute of International and European Affairs in Dublin. Next year, Ireland takes on the rotating presidency of the Council of Ministers of the European Union. We'll be doing that for the 8th time. I'm absolutely delighted that Minister Thomas Byrne, Minister with responsibility for European affairs in the Irish government, has agreed to speak with us now, 7 or 8 months out from when Ireland will be taking on this important role in both the EU and global affairs. First of all, Minister Byrne, we have a wide and various audience at the Institute. Some people know you, some won't. Would you like to introduce yourself to those listening?
Yeah, so I'm Thomas Byrne, Minister of State for European Affairs and Minister of State for Defence as well. I'm a TD actually since 2007, and I was a senator in the period 2011 to 2016. So I've been in the Oireachtas more or less since 2007. I was elected quite young at the age of 29. Before that, I was a solicitor. I worked actually in the European Law Department of McCann Fitzgerald for a period and trained as a solicitor there. I also qualified as an attorney at law in New York, so I certainly had a good legal career behind me when I got into the Dáil first, as I said, at the age of 29. And here I am now still, so really looking forward to the presidency. And I suppose all through my career, even in college actually, I had a job in the Irish Centre for European Law in Trinity College, kind of stuffing envelopes, actually inviting people to conferences. You'd have an email list now. You wouldn't be employing students, probably similar to the IIEA. So that was. So I've always had an interest in the EU side of things, and even in the Lisbon referendums, I was centrally involved in the late noughties as well. So it's great to be here again for the second time, because I was previously Minister for European Affairs during Brexit and COVID. And I'm glad to be back now in advance of our presidency. In between my 2 stints as Europe Minister, I was Minister of State for Sport and Minister of State as well for the Gaeltacht and the Irish language.
Of course.
So very strong interest in the Irish language as well. I'm glad that it's an EU official language.
And you represent the constituency of Meath East, right?
Yeah, I can't forget my constituents, because they're the most important people. And look, I mean, I'm very grateful to my constituents for electing me a total of 4 times to the Dáil at this stage. And it is a great honour to be then entrusted with ministerial responsibility, but you have to keep in touch with the constituency and with constituents, and grateful for my team as well locally that allows that to happen, especially during my time as Minister of European Affairs, which is very, very busy.
No doubt. So I guess the purpose of this discussion is partly thinking of the constituents in Meath East and all across Ireland and all across Europe. The discussion, I think it would be good to try and contextualise a little bit, or just to discuss really kind of in broad brushes what the presidency is about, what it means for Ireland, what it means for you and your role as minister. So I guess if you can just start with that, what is actually involved with a country taking on the rotating presidency?
Well, we often talk about it, I suppose, and I always feel we should explain it to people, even to an educated or an informed audience. I mean, the presidency is of the Council of the European Union, which essentially is the governments of the European Union, the member states. And the presidency's role is to run that side of the EU. I think it's important to remember and recall that, you know, if we want legislation to pass through the EU and become, as we call it, European law, generally speaking, the Commission has to propose it. And then the European Parliament and the Member States, in the form of the Council, have to agree to it and negotiate that legislation to make it come into law. So the presidency is of the Member States, so the role of the government there during the presidency would be to chair those meetings at every level, and there's levels from leader down to quite junior civil servant level. To represent then the Council in whatever the agreed position is in negotiations with the European Parliament and indeed with the Commission. And indeed also to represent the European Union position at various international summits that would take place during our presidency. And there's quite a number of them. I'm trying to collect them at the moment. There could be 4 COPs during our presidency. There could be a WHO pandemic treaty negotiated. There's talk of the International Maritime Organization as well. There's a number of those international events that Ireland would have a key role on behalf of the EU. And already departments, not just in those cases, because they're probably the most prominent, but departments are working through the administrative arrangements and the administrative requirements that are needed to run a successful presidency, to do that basic job of representing the member states, of negotiating with the Parliament, of standing up on the international stage. A huge amount of that will involve civil servants doing the work, and they're doing incredible preparations. What the citizens, what the general public will see of the presidency, I suspect, is the leaders. So we'll have the largest ever political event in Ireland, which will be the meeting of the European political community that will take place in Ireland during our term of the presidency. Alongside that, there's an informal meeting of the leaders of the European Union. There will be 22 informal ministerial meetings, and there'll be other events and conferences as well. That's the visible side of it. But apart from that, there's about 250 other meetings taking place all around Ireland. And I'd say most of them in Dublin, but we will have them around the country. A quarter or so of the ministerial meetings will be outside Dublin. That's where the real work takes place, along with, again, meetings in Luxembourg and Brussels that will take place too. So it's a huge amount of work, and I think the system here, if I can describe it as that, is really gearing up to do a good job, not just on what's visible in terms of, making it look good, but secondly, actually sort of doing a good job in terms of moving forward on what are our priorities and the priorities of the European Union and the member states.
And just to be clear, you said 250 meetings, right?
In Ireland?
Yeah.
So like that's
sizable amount.
That's only meetings in Ireland, and many of them could be study visits or ministerial informals, but there'll be many other routine meetings that are happening every day in Brussels. We would just have to be the chair of them during that time. And that could mean, for example, there's a Coreper, which is the committee of the ambassadors meets. It's our ambassador over there who'd be running that. There's various working groups or working parties on individual issues such as relations with the UK or enlargement in my area, or certainly lots of them in agriculture and the environment. It'll all be Irish officials who'll be chairing those meetings and trying their best to get consensus or to get agreement in whatever process it is, whether it's qualified majority or consensus. Yeah.
And I mean, I follow this stuff quite closely. It's my area of interest, and I actually probably didn't appreciate as much as I should this idea that so you and your team and the ministers representing Ireland will be representing the EU on the global stage at some really important junctures.
It's a really, and in fact it'll be ministers, but civil servants will be doing a huge amount of the work. And it's a huge responsibility, and already I know departments are looking at document management systems and just getting their own act together administratively. So again, what you'll see as a member of the public would be all the nice stuff, and the motorcades, exactly. And you'll see all that. We'll try to do that as conveniently for the public as possible, but security concerns will be paramount. But there's a huge amount of work under the bonnet, and a huge amount of work that just won't be seen by the public. But what we hope the result of that is that we'll achieve excellent results, achieve good consensus, and therefore enhance the reputation of the country, both from an administrative point of view and a diplomatic point of view, and that then helps us, I think, in incalculable ways. So that's the ambition. Let's see that we work it out in reality.
No doubt. And just in terms of the actual planning, Minister, that I wonder, there's so much stuff that is just going to happen during the presidency, not least the big international meetings we mentioned. There'll be the EU's legislative agenda, which is still kind of, it's going to be carrying along on its own kind of journey, regardless of who the presidency is. I'm not just talking about Ireland now. We currently have the Danes, even before us, the Cypriots are going to take over, and then handing over to Ireland at the start of July in 2026. What kind of influence can a good presidency have over the agenda, or are you just basically managing it as best as you can for the 6 months you have it and passing it on, or you can actually shape and steer things?
Well, obviously there's an element of handling what's in front of you, whether it's the legislative work programme that's there, the files that are still outstanding between the Member States and the European Parliament, what international summits are on. So there is a part of it that is just dealing with the agenda in the best possible way. But there's also a chance to try to shape the agenda. And what I think what the Taoiseach wants is, he's set a presidency defined by action, but what he wants is, where can Ireland make a difference? Where can we actually have a big impact? And when we're still looking for ideas from the public on what our priority should be, and there's a portal open on the gov.ie consultation page, and that's open I think till the 12th of December, and people can make submissions on where they think our priority should be. And already I'm meeting business and meeting institutions. I've met the IIEA, I've met the trade, the environmental pillar, the community and voluntary pillar, business, various sectors, and individual departments are meeting their own sort of sectoral bodies, sectoral organisations as well, in terms of trying to find out where people think our priority should be. We're looking for someone to give us a one-word theme, if that's possible, and if anyone has any ideas, send them in through the portal. We've had some ideas from members of the public and from organisations, so we'll consider them all really carefully. There's probably three broad baskets of areas, and it's very, very broad. I mean, one would be, you know, principles-based, like values, the rule of law, even the social Europe, I think, would be very important as well. I think that's going to be of importance. You look at the area of competitiveness, you know, how can we make a difference in terms of easing the burden of red tape for businesses without sort of, you know, going back on our commitments on the environment or workers' rights and all of that. And competitiveness encompasses, of course, this, you know, single market and capital markets and savings investment, all of that. Then, of course, security and defence is the third basket, really, that we can't get away from. Interesting thing about security and defence is obviously it's a priority for Ireland, but we're not a member of NATO, so people say, well, what's going to happen there? And the message I'm giving out, both at home and abroad, is that, you know, as presidency, we will be the independent broker around that table. And we have to allow member states to achieve their ambitions and their necessities, really, in terms of security and defence. And we will do that, notwithstanding the fact that we're not in NATO. And it may be for some, it may be an uncomfortable place to be in terms of Ireland's traditional policies, the fact that we're not a member of NATO. But we have to do that job, and we will do that honestly with the member states. Like, at the same time, as I say, we're not a member of NATO, but we still are increasing our own defence and really our security, how we protect ourselves. So that will all be happening during the presidency. But we've got to see ourselves, it's not the Irish policy that's going in there, it's really the Irish government doing the work, and we have all the European governments. But the interesting thing is, and this goes for almost all policy areas, including security and defence, including the EU budget, like, every member state has their own specificity. So, like, nobody's completely unique either, like, you know, or in fact, they're not all, and on the other hand, they're not all the same. Like, everybody has different issues. Like, if you look at our colleagues in the trio, like, Greece has its own security concerns, obviously, that they will express in the Eastern Mediterranean. Lithuania has totally different security concerns, while Russia, of course, is all over in terms of people's worries. So I think it's important that we give voice to what the member states are saying. That's going to be our job.
So just to come back, you mentioned NATO a couple of times, but I'm very interested in European collective security and Ireland's role therein. And I see areas where Ireland has stepped up, including supporting the European training mission for Ukraine, the rapid deployment capacity. Indeed, Lieutenant General Sean Clancy, the former head of our Defence Forces, is now the chair of the European Military Committee. Do you think enough has been done to profile the contribution Ireland is making to Europe's collective security already?
Look, I think we want to make sure we don't go too far too fast. Like, you know, we want to be clear, and I'm clear with the public, we're not joining NATO, we're neutral. That's not on the agenda, it's not going to happen. If there was ever a proposal for European Common Defence, we wouldn't be joining that anyway, either. So but still we are obviously interconnected with people. We have decided to upgrade our own defence capacity. Actually, what we're doing is increasing numbers, we hope, get more recruits in. That's going to cost more money. But also we need to provide ourselves with some basic requirements. So we don't have a full radar system. The sonar is not really adequate. You know, we've got to get that in. We don't have the airplanes, like basic, and I'm not talking about fighter jets, but airplanes. Like, in fact, like in the 80s when Brian Keane was a hostage in Lebanon, and when he was released, as I understand it, at that point we had a plane that could go and collect him, bring him home. We do not have that capacity at the moment. So that's why there's an investment into new airplanes. We're starting to get that capacity back. When Kabul was evacuated, we had no capacity to go over there. So we cooperated with other European countries, like Finland and some other countries in that case. So that's where our military spending is going. I think there's definitely scope to cooperate with other European countries on a case-by-case basis in terms of what we can do to bring efficiencies about and what we can do to learn from other countries. We have structured cooperation with NATO through Partnership for Peace, like since 1999, I think. So that's gone on a long, long time, and it hasn't changed really anything. We are still known, thankfully, around the world for our peacekeeping missions. Some of them are actually run by the European Union. There's a well-known example, IIEA, which is on the... And I do take offence. I see some people talk about the EU and its wars, the EU militarising. I mean, look, the EU military missions are like IIEA. It's designed to prevent illegal weapons coming into the EU, breaking a UN arms embargo from Libya. And they also help very much with people found in the Mediterranean, like people on boats. Like it's really good humanitarian work they're doing that's actually having really good protection for us. And Ireland's involved with that. Like, I mean, it's really, really good work. Kosovo, for example.
Kosovo, I was going to mention.
We've people there, K4. That's under NATO command and has been for 25 years, and has not impacted on our neutrality and our it's our peacekeepers who are there doing incredible work. And the commanders there that I met, really, really proud, and I'm very proud of the Irish people to meet there. They do tremendous work.
Just thinking about all of the many events, to bring it back to the presidency, and you mentioned this, Minister, there's going to be, I'm extremely excited about Dublin, Ireland, hosting the EPC, for example.
Well, I don't think we've said where it'll be held, actually. So
I did just check myself there, Dublin, Ireland.
So let's see when we make a formal announcement as to where that'll be held, yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. No, absolutely.
It will be in Ireland, yeah.
It'll certainly be in Ireland, but you're right, though, it could be anywhere. My question is just about, we look at the news all around Europe and you see various attempts by malign actors to try and disrupt meetings like that, and you see drones at airports and stuff. I assume this is a concern.
Of course it's a concern, and the concern as well is that we don't know what will happen. I mean, the Danes, had this particular series of events, and it has happened in other countries. We've had drones at the airport before, but it was very much, I think, like civilians. It wasn't. They weren't organised by rogue foreign actors, whereas this is what's happened now in recent times in Europe. So this is a concern. There are other issues of concern as well. The Russian shadow fleet is of concern. We have a lot of cables going across the seas. We have a gas connection as well under the sea as well. So we have points of vulnerability. We want to make sure we're protected as best we can. And undoubtedly, people will try to disrupt the European Union in general, because the European Union is at variance with the objectives of some of these rogue actors. So that's why they target the EU. Whatever you say about the EU, it is a peace project. It is a project that brings stability to countries. It brings Western-style democracy. It brings, capitalism with a social conscience, because the EU is responsible for all of our equality, environmental, and workers' rights rules that we have. So those who don't like those things, who don't like giving freedom and democracy and human rights and freedom of expression to people, are only too happy to try to disrupt that. And that's what we've seen from places like Russia and Belarus in particular.
There is, I appreciate you're a busy man, and it's a sitting day, so I might just ask you about 2 or 3 more things if you have the time. You mentioned one thing I'm personally very interested in the trios, right? Where each presidency is part of a group of 3. Ireland is going to be the start of a trio, handing over to our colleagues in Lithuania and then down in Greece. Yeah. And even geographically, that's actually quite cool. If you look at going from the wild Atlantic up to the Baltic and down to the Mediterranean. And I know there's always some effort to coordinate across the 18 months of a trio, because one obvious criticism for a presidency is it's so short. Even the best presidency, and I'm sure Ireland will have the best presidency, once you're up and running, you're basically halfway there, Can you say anything about just your own ambitions for how the trio might be?
We're currently sort of putting together our trio programme. So we have, I think there's a first draft that's gone in, or is about to go into the Council Secretariat from worked out by what are called our Antici in Brussels. They're the officials who, it's a particular class of official in the council building, and the 3 Anticis are working on drawing up that document. And they've got political steer from me and my colleagues, because we met at ministerial level twice at this point to give a steer to where we want to see the trio priorities. Look, the trio programme, I'm glad that you said you're fascinated by it, because I don't know how wide that fascination might be. But it is important. You are right. It's very important in terms of giving a bit of continuity to the programs. And there is, as you said, in terms of the sea, the Atlantic, the Irish Sea, the Aegean, the Mediterranean, and the Baltic Sea. It's a very important connection actually that brings us all together. But there are other issues as well. So those discussions will continue, and we will have a trio programme published much nearer the time. Indeed, our own priorities won't be published till June. So there's loads of time to get ideas into us, and we'll work on them. And indeed the same goes for the trio programme as well. But it is important to have that bit of continuity, to have really good relations with our counterparts. I will visit Lithuania now next week, but I'm already very close to my colleague there. My Greek counterpart as well. I spoke at a conference with her yesterday. They were both at the GAC, the General Affairs Council, on Monday. So we'd have good connections personally, our officials have the same, and I think that will lead to a good trio programme, and that then gives, as you say, the continuity to the various measures that the EU will do during that time.
It's fair to pick up on my fascination. I'm very into this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I can't disguise it, but for me, you know, the motto of the Union is about being united in diversity.
Yeah.
And one of the really, I think, interesting things is just like it displays how very diverse this like relatively small part of the world, 3 time zones, but like moving from these very distinct kind of cultures and places.
Well, yeah, and like, okay, we probably don't know as much about Lithuania as Greece historically in Ireland, but I think I find with the Lithuanian government that we, at all levels, we get on very, very well. So I've got on my various counterparts from Lithuania over the years. I've had a really good connection with them. The same goes for the Taoiseach and foreign ministers and other interlocutors as well. We just get on. We seem to have a very similar outlook. Again, with Greece, most Irish people are quite familiar with that country, whether it's through history. I did classical studies myself in school, so it was a great privilege. The first time I was ever in Greece was with my counterpart, actually, this year in Delphi, in Greece. And we've all heard of these places, we've all known these places, and so there is a knowledge, and so plus, of course, to spread the knowledge of Ireland, because we can never take that for granted either. So we keep going out there, showing up, making the connections. Again, the Greek government, I think, is an easy government to work with. They have a deep commitment to the European Union. It has helped to transform Greece in the same way the European Union has transformed Ireland, and we've a lot in common, and we continue to work together at every level.
And that's actually, it's a nice link to my last kind of thematic question, and then I'll ask you just a general one, Minister, at the end, just to kind of sum up your own hopes for the presidency. But I will ask you about something I've heard you talk about, and I think your personal interest and passion is very clear, and it's around enlargement. So Ireland is a country, we came in the first round of enlargement in 1973, the Greeks were next in 81, and then the Lithuanians more recently in 2004. And each of the countries in different ways, but I'd say especially Ireland is a case study for, you know, successful enlargement, a country that has done really well over the time that it's been in the EU. What are your hopes for enlargement at the level of the EU now? It's a difficult one to crack in terms of institutional reform and the treaties and whatnot. Do you think there's any hope that you'll be able to lay the foundations for further enlargement?
Look, there's huge momentum on it, and there are difficulties in the process, but if I can give a couple of targets. One is that I would love to be finished in negotiations in Montenegro during our presidency, and I said it publicly and privately that if we have to have an intergovernmental conference on the 31st of December at the end of our presidency next year, I'd be happy to do that to complete the negotiations. We would then have to do, that's in terms of getting their laws into line with the EU, we would then have to do an accession treaty negotiation, and we're pushing at the moment to make sure we start the negotiations of that very early, because I think we are ready for Montenegro. They're a small country. They have a bit of work to do now with themselves over the next year. We'll help them as much as we can. Can we get Albania further along and get them into a situation where they'd be like a year later? Can we, you know, unlock the veto on Ukraine at the minute? That would be important while moving on Moldova. Can we unlock the veto on North Macedonia? Like they've been blocked really from negotiations for decades. And what can we do with Serbia as well? Serbia is a really important country there. Ireland has just opened an embassy. I think it's important that we continue to engage with them. And again, we'll work with Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo as well in the various circumstances that are there. Who knows what Iceland might do during our presidency? I don't know. They might have a referendum on the EU. We leave that to them. But it's certainly something that we wouldn't have a problem with.
There's a very special link now between Ireland and Iceland, obviously, with Éamon Hallgrímsson.
Of course, yeah. But that's only the latest connection. Because I think there's a lot of cousins up there that we don't know, and that we've a lot of connections with the Icelandic people. Yeah.
But you know yourself, sports diplomacy can be very powerful.
Exactly. Yeah.
I guess just to wrap up, Minister, I've really enjoyed the short conversation, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us. You've already kind of answered this in terms of the presidency is an opportunity for Ireland to profile itself as a really good European player and to do a good job. You've hinted at some of the priorities around values, very important, competitiveness, security, resilience, defence. Are there any other ambitions, either from the level of cabinet or you yourself as Minister TD for Middle East? Is there anything that you, once you've finished the presidency, you'd look back and say, job well done?
Well, I think the MFF would be the biggest thing, the multi-annual financial framework. So it looks likely that the negotiations for that will climax during our presidency. We certainly hope. So we're working towards that. And can we make sure that we have an EU budget that works for all of us, including my constituents in Middle East, over the next period of time? So that's going to be a lot of work in advance of the presidency, setting out our own position, and then during the presidency, negotiating with everybody being that impartial broker. So we've fairly clear starting points. We've set out that in a government document as to what our negotiating position is. So we'll have to make sure that's really clear in advance, and then negotiate them with everybody to get this over the line, hopefully during our presidency. So that if we're able to achieve that, that would be a job well done. If we got the negotiations finished at Montenegro, that would be a job well done. And then you're looking through each department. Have we made a really good effort to engage the member states, engage with the Parliament, engage at an international level? That's a collective effort that we'll all have to do, and I think we're capable of it, and we will do it.
And just to be clear, in conclusion, it's sobering, but just for the viewers and listeners at home, the MFF, the multi-annual financial framework, this is the EU's budget for the next
long-term
7
budget,
years,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, it's Irish leaders, politicians and officials who'll be overseeing the kind of final production of that.
Basically, that's what we would expect, yeah. Now, it depends, like if something could delay it, but generally, that's what we fully expect, and it's a big responsibility, yeah.
So just to add that to all the stuff you outlined, the international treaties, the regular work of the EU, our own priorities, and also what the EU can actually do in terms of finance.
So we'll be asking for a bit of leeway from my constituents, and I'd say all ministers' constituents actually at that time. Don't worry, we're not going too far, but it's a big job for the government, and it's a big job for our civil servants as well.
Absolutely, no doubt, and it's good you've mentioned the officials a number of occasions, because I can imagine it's a huge job of work for all involved. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope, Minister, we might be able to check in with you again at some stage between now and the presidency. I wish you the very best of luck with it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks again.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Like it.
All right.
This podcast is brought to you by the IIEA, sharing ideas, shaping policy.